In the wrestling industry, I don't think anyone has more doubters than wrestling group The Elite. For whatever reason, people like to bet against these guys, even though The Elite constantly hand L's to their doubters. Especially as of late, there were a lot of people criticizing AEW's direction and booking, and I just sat back patiently waiting, because I've seen this too many times to the point where I already know how this is gonna end. This is Tranquilo Club, and this is why you never bet against The Elite. Over the past 2 months, while every clickbait wrestling YouTube channel decided to make videos on the so-called demise of AEW, I decided to patiently wait. While everyone was rushing to talk about AEW's declining ratings in the month of March, I decided to patiently wait. While the internet wrestling community decided that AEW Revolution would be the start of the death of AEW, I also decided to patiently wait. I sat back as all these creators started to say that there were too many factions, that Kenny Omega wasn't a draw, and that the New Japan AEW partnership was a fail. And the shocking part to me is that none of this was new. I've been a fan of the Elite since 2016, and people have been doubting them since day one. And the beautiful thing is the Elite have proven them wrong every single time. When the Elite blew up in popularity in New Japan, and therefore in America as well, people doubted that they would be able to sell 10,000 tickets for All In. And guess what? They not only sold 10,000 tickets and put on the largest independent wrestling show in American history, they made sure it was one of the best wrestling shows of the last decade while also changing the industry, just because they could. But even that was on a much smaller scale compared to what they're doing today. When AEW was founded, the Elite were put under a much larger microscope by wrestling journalists, critics, fans, and trolls alike. If All In was day zero, then the formation of AEW was day one, and like I said, since day one the Elite were being doubted. They said AEW was just a t-shirt company until they got a TV deal. Then when it was announced that their weekly TV show Dynamite would be on one of the biggest cable stations in America, TNT, the narrative changed to they won't even get 500,000 viewers, especially not against NXT. Then of course the Dynamite premiere did a monster 1.4 million viewership rating, and then it became it's a marathon, not a sprint. Eventually NXT is gonna start winning every week, and that didn't happen of course. And who can forget the last Dynamite episode of 2019, the one that ended with the Dark Order segment, the one that everybody hated. You know, the week where NXT beat Dynamite in the demo and the overall viewership number. I saw people saying that Rhea Ripley winning the NXT women's title that week was like Mankind winning the WWF title, that the tides were finally gonna turn in WWE's favor. But what do you know, AEW would go on its best run to this day in the lead up to Revolution, producing some of the best weekly wrestling TV I've ever seen, and getting renewed by TNT for 3 more years in the process, therefore putting to bed all those idiotic rumors that AEW would be dead within the year. Then the pandemic hit, and people started saying you can't sell a pay-per-view for $50 during a pandemic, and then AEW did their biggest buy rate during the pandemic with Double or Nothing 2020. They also said that the Elite were being booked like chumps, they were losing to nobodies, and then they started to win and people started complaining that the EVPs were booking themselves to get over. Then when Kenny Omega was finally on top, they said that he wasn't a draw, despite his segments always drawing really well. They said he doesn't appeal to a casual audience, even though in 2021 a casual wrestling fan is almost non-existent. And there's a lot more in there that I missed, but I'm not gonna get into it because this video is more addressing the last 2 months where everybody's been questioning AEW's booking. I said at the start of the video that I patiently waited, and I did that for a reason, because time and time again I've seen people doubt the Elite and AEW in particular. After the ending of Revolution 2021, it gave a lot of people ammo to say AEW was on a downward spiral, and these people would feel vindicated when the ratings would come in, because it seemed that the ratings just kept going down for AEW Dynamite. But what most people failed to point out was that these ratings were pretty in line to 1 year ago when AEW had a similar trend, but they came back strong during Double or Nothing season. So that's why I would have a good laugh when people would say this is because the ending of Revolution, because there's too many factions, there's too many hardcore matches, there's too much blood. And this was only amplified when NXT's biggest show of the year, TakeOver, during WrestleMania week went went head to head with a normal episode of Dynamite, and of course NXT came out on top. This prompted people to say that NXT won the Wednesday Night War because this would be the last night that both shows would be going head to head. And it further allowed people to push their narratives that this Elite storyline is hard to follow, that nobody wants to see something from 8 years ago being redone, despite the quarter-hour ratings saying otherwise. I sat back and thought, let's wait until AEW has Wednesday nights all to themselves and see what kind of rating they pull then. Sure enough, NXT comes first on Tuesday night, and then we see that their rating goes up pretty well. They make the top 10 for the first time in a while, so AEW's has to go up surely. So Wednesday night comes, AEW puts on a fantastic episode of Dynamite in my opinion, and the next day we find out that they pulled 1.2 million viewers. Their second highest viewership number outside of the premiere episode of Dynamite. This exceeded even the biggest optimists' expectations. This number proved that pretty much every critic who said AEW was doing something wrong was wrong themselves. Let this sink in. AEW Dynamite got the biggest post-WrestleMania bump in viewership, and they're not even a WWE show. It just proved that the Wednesday Night War was damaging both shows' viewerships, especially AEW. Imagine what all those big shows could have done if NXT wasn't running against it. Even while competing with NXT, AEW was pulling pretty good numbers, but nobody could have expected that this would be the number they would do on their first night alone. And it made me think, imagine what kind of number Blood and Guts will pull on May 5th, 2021. That's gonna be a huge show. Also, if you think AEW and their fans are the only ones happy about this rating, then you're wrong, because TNT put out an official statement celebrating this rating as well. They're happy that they have AEW on their network, because it seems all but confirmed now that Dynamite is TNT's biggest hit outside of the NBA. Because of this rating, we've seen a lot of these false narratives start to die out. The Elite are draws, and their current storyline is in fact captivating. And no, TNT isn't going to cancel AEW, so they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Since 2016, people have been doubting the Elite. They say that the wrestling they like, the wrestling they do, isn't a draw, but they've proven them wrong since day one. And if you don't believe me, just look at the numbers, because the first week that AEW Dynamite went unopposed, they proved that they're breathing down Monday Night Raw's neck. The fact that a promotion that is only 2 years old is so close to Monday Night Raw, the flagship show of WWE, the promotion that has been around since as long as I can remember, is absolutely insane. And the crazy part is, this was only week 1 of Dynamite being unopposed. The Dynamite card wasn't even that stacked, which means those big shows, those massive important shows, are gonna do monster numbers. In simpler terms, do not bet against the Elite, or maybe you doubters should continue doing so, because every time you do, the Elite proves you wrong, which is good for the wrestling industry.